GBGuns Armory, episode 45, the series where we talk about stuff that's been reviewed in the past, and I provide a little more of the thoughts and feels and a little less of the facts and performance that you see already in the main review. This is also meant to be a forum type place. Since these are all guns that have been out for a while, there's a good chance you've shot one, owned one, know someone who has, and I'd like to collect those experiences in contrast to the new release reviews where it's maybe the first time you've seen it, you haven't handled one yet, all you gotta do is just accept what you're being told on camera. These things and other guns in the series have been out for a while, so let's get some collective experience going. Get in that comment section, fill it up with what you know, think, or feel, so that others can learn from this. Since this is episode 45, I had to grab a 45. This is the Springfield Armory XDM 45 ACP compact. It's a 3.8 inch. I believe it was a 10 rounder. Yeah, 9+1 with the flush fit magazine. And it was my first real big carry gun. My first pistol was a 1911 45, and as soon as I got my carry permit, I realized that was way too heavy and too big. So I wanted something else, but since 45 was the ammo I was buying, I wanted to stick with 45, and I got this guy. 45, by the way, even in 2024, may not be as dead as you think it is. Check the pinned comment. I'll link to an industry report from the National Association of Sporting Goods Wholesalers that I did a brief analysis on over at gbgunsdepot.com, and it's surprising to see where 45 is on the caliber list, especially compared to some of those other calibers that a lot of people make a lot more noise about. Apparently they're not buying it or shooting it. Anyways, moving to this 10 rounder with a 3.8 inch versus the 5 inch that my 1911 had, seemed like it would be more comfortable, and sure enough it was. Moving to a 10 rounder also increased the weight of the ammo, so it was heavier but a little more comfortable. I liked that it had a loaded chamber indicator because as someone new to carry, I was still not yet convinced on carrying with one in the pipe. I've since, of course, gone well beyond that, and I do not carry without one in the pipe. I trusted the grip safety to do fine, and the dingus on the trigger safety to be my safe aspect. I liked that there was an ambidextrous magazine release because I like ejecting like that with my middle finger instead of shifting my grip and changing the way the gun is in my hand to reach with my thumb. Everything was cool. I enjoyed this. I took it to front sight and did pretty well until a pin broke in it that meant the grip safety wasn't functional. It wasn't functional in that the gun would not fire. I've heard I'm not the first person to have this experience, and at front sight, the on-site gunsmith was able to repair and replace it quickly and easily for me and get me back out in the course for training. So everything was good there. Later, when I started competing, wanted to improve the trigger a little bit, and I went with, I forget the name of the company, but it was a spring system to enhance the trigger. And if you watch this trigger, no wall whatsoever. It is slightly lighter than it had been. You just got to learn, you got to do the stroke pull that, as I've mentioned in other videos, is becoming the new trend of the way to shoot. So I was fine with that. Everything was good until I went to a bowling pin match, and because this was 45, I got put in the big boy class. Bowling pin matches, if you don't know, really fun, loads of fun. It's competition, but there's enough element of luck that you never really know for sure who's going to win. There are bowling pins on a table, and buzzer goes off, and you're timed to draw, or sometimes from low ready, clear the table. The thing about bowling pins is they're round, and their weight isn't balanced. So even if you land a good hit on them, sometimes they will topple or spin. And once they lay on their side, it's all kinds of nightmare because You could hit them and they just spin on the table rather than clearing off the table. That's where the fun comes in and the element of luck. The difference in categories, at least where I was shooting, was that the weaker calibers started with the pins in the middle of the table from front to rear, so that you're just knocking them halfway to get them off the table, and the big boys had them on the leading edge of the table. In shooting that, I noticed that when other folks hit the pins were flying off the table pretty clearly, whereas with this 3.8 inch 45, I was just scooting them. I then had a friend join me, didn't have a handgun, so I loaned her a Glock 19 that I had later acquired, and she was clearing them off the table quite easily. That's when I started to learn about muzzle energy. Did you know that a 3.8 inch 45 has less muzzle energy than a 4-inch 9mm? That's because even though 45 is the big boy and it's twice the bullet mass, 45 was created to replicate 45 Colt. When 45 ACP came out, it was Browning's task to take this 45 Colt round that had been a standard military cartridge with black powder and modernize it, make it more efficient with smokeless powder, which allowed for a shorter case. But his goal was 850 feet per second with a 230 grain bullet out of a 5-inch barrel, because 5 inches was about the appropriate size for most of those single action Army revolvers. For some reason, and now there are some specialty loads out there, but in general, the powder burn rate, how that pressure is created to move that bullet at that speed from that barrel length is slow enough that when you go below a 5-inch barrel, you start to really lose velocity. And when you lose velocity, you lose muzzle energy. And so, long story short, this does not hit as hard as a 4-inch 9mm. And that was an eye-opening experience for me. That fueled a lot of what I talk about on the main channels, especially when I talk about barrel length and ammunition, is you really got to pay attention to the combination. It's not simply choosing something that's more convenient. This gun might be more convenient to carry, but if you want to be sure that your hollow points are going to perform as intended and hit the target fast enough to open and do their job, you probably need to look into some specialty loads that are intended for compact or short-barreled guns. Your standard 45 hollow point may not do its job out of a 3.8 inch. Same thing is true with 9mm. 4-inch is the optimal barrel length there. All of these micro compacts that everyone loves, that are so light and so convenient to carry, they're also not giving the bullet the speed it needs. So, I advocate about that, talk about that all the time on the main channel, even if just in passing. Certainly I do in the articles. There it's even more important because we're talking about self-defense, but I saw the literal representation of it with this gun shooting a bowling pin and watching the pin just kind of go, oh, instead of fly off as I expected it to. Now, I learned all this, or began to dive into it while I was still running those bowling pin matches, and tried to argue that to the guys running the match, of saying, no, this is not big boy, this is weaker than a Glock 19, let me run in the regular class. Of course that didn't work. These are some of the things that disenfranchised me about competitive shooting, is they focus so much on some details but refuse to accept other ones like basic physics. In fact, I have the same issue at my local range. Love that range, but there, if something is shouldered, it must be at the rifle bay. So my VZ Scorpion back there, VZ61, 3-inch 380, too powerful for the pistol bays. But my 6-inch 10mm or my Tokarev, that's fine. Silly. Anyways, this gun is definitely one that is out there. It used to rule the roost. The XDMs, or the XDs, and then later the XDMs were the only thing anybody wanted to talk about for a number of years. We're talking probably 2011 to 2013-ish, maybe, give or take. They were the hotness, and they kind of fell out of popularity. Part of that is some dislike for Springfield, but keep in mind, Springfield is just the import brand on these. This is by HS Product in Croatia. They developed the whole thing. It's their gun. Springfield's just importing them. So I try not to hate on the gun for any politics of the importer. Yeah, the importer still makes a buck when you buy one, but I'm a shooter, not a politician, so focus on the guns. I'm curious to hear from you guys in this video. How many of you are 45 fans, still shoot 45? Were you aware of that muzzle energy sensitivity? Do you carry 45? And then, of course, last but not least, these XDMs that were huge, and there are even clone models of them out there now. The patents are expired, so we're starting to see Turkish and other countries manufacture XDM-ish guns, selling them for dirt cheap, which is forcing the price of these to come down for them to sell, which is great for us. Competition is always good for consumers in a free economy, or semi-free in our case. And have you checked out that article? There was some surprising stuff in there, especially on the calibers. Wasn't so much surprised with what the most popular guns are. It's an easy one to guess, but the caliber thing really shocked me, especially after the lesson I'd had with this on muzzle energy and barrel length. That's episode 45. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time in the GBGuns Armory.